It's that time again when voters emerge from the darkness of the suburbs or flyover states of America or come out in droves in the cities to do one thing, maybe vote. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. As always, we've got Matt behind the camera. I'm Ben, you're you. Scully is somewhere in the darkness, probably watching the new X-Files, and that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. Now, why did we say maybe? Well, we say maybe because voting numbers are actually very low in this country, cartoonishly low. And there are a couple different factors causing this. One of the reasons is that unlike many other nations, there is not a mandated holiday or mandated national day off just for voting. You just have to work it out somehow in your personal life. Secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, many US citizens do not trust the government for one reason or another. And we're talking about people on the left, people on the right, people that, in Alaska, people in Hawaii, just across the continent. Most people have an abiding distrust of Uncle Sam. And this really comes out in election years. So this week, Matt, Noel, and myself are looking at political conspiracies. Here's 6 examples. Number 1, the DNC and the RNC. Now, before everybody falls asleep, let's get through this snooze fest quickly. So the parties in the US, the Democrats and the Republicans, are run by these things called committees, national committees. National committees sound kind of boring, but they're pretty important because they are in charge of fundraising, they're in charge of strategy, they're in charge of, every 4 years they make a platform. It's kind of like branding and popularizing. Most importantly, for presidential election years, these groups are in charge of the primary debates. So not the debates between, the ultimate Republican hopeful or the ultimate Democratic hopeful or the ultimate independent hopeful. We'll get to that part. The debates they run instead are the debates within their parties. So Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump versus Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. And it's difficult to overestimate the importance of these debates. Candidates rise and fall based on their performance. So, as you can imagine, it's a big deal when people accuse either party, either committee, of corruption in the debates. And that's exactly what's happening now. Critics of the current DNC chair, a lady named Debbie Wasserman Schultz, accuse her of intentionally messing with the debate schedule and pushing in some very shady ways the Clinton campaign. So instead of actually representing the wishes of Democratic voters, whatever those wishes may be, they accuse her of unfairly using her position to rig the game for Hillary Clinton. And the big debate here is that there are relatively few Democratic primary debates, and there are weird times. There are times where most people are not going to be watching TV. So is this a purposeful thing? Have perhaps Bernie Sanders' campaign numbers risen so precipitously, and has he performed well enough in debates that the DNC chair just thinks the best thing to do is to not have people watch? It's an interesting theory, and at first it just sounds, it sounds like a lot of speculation. And it is, but let's also keep in mind that in 2008, during Hillary Clinton's previous campaign, her campaign co-chair was a lady named Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And while we're on Clinton conspiracies, let's go to another one that goes across both sides of the aisle. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump. Can we cut to a Trump picture? Yeah, that's him. You remember, he's been on Saturday Night Live recently. He's all over the news with statements that some people think are just honest, straight talk, and that other people think are offensive, buffoonish. I don't know. It really depends on who you talk to. And right now, he is the Republican frontrunner. He stands a very good chance of becoming the next president of the United States, if he actually wants it. That brings us to number 2. Is Donald Trump a Clinton plant? This is an interesting theory. Okay, so the idea is that Donald Trump is purposefully running to splinter and fracture the Republican Party in hopes of bolstering Hillary Clinton's position. Now, why would he do that? Why would somebody be a false flag candidate, an undercover operative? The people who believe this theory are pointing to two main things. The first being past associations with the Clintons. Donald Trump and the Clintons have historically been associated with each other in various things. He's been a donor to Clinton campaigns. He's partnered with them on a couple of other, endeavors, charitable projects, stuff like that. And a few weeks before he launched his campaign, he had a conversation over the phone with Bill Clinton. Both sides say that they didn't talk about running for president. But of course, people who believe that Trump is a Clinton plant completely think this is the smoking gun. So let's keep in mind too that if you are on the conservative side of US politics, then you're not always going to agree with Donald Trump's positions. So this kind of folds into this widespread distrust of Donald Trump. But it also leads us to a bigger thing, number 3, political dynasties. So just a bit of background, whether you live in the US or not, you know that in theory, on paper, this is a meritocracy, meaning that the old American dream could come true for you, right? In the past, you hear all these stories, someone shows up with $12 in their pocket, next thing you know, they're running a lumber empire, I don't know, a shoe empire, something. They're succeeding in business. And this system, it's easy to forget how, again, theoretically, amazing it is, especially when you consider that for much of history, people have been ruled by families, their only qualification being the brand of genitalia they spouted out from. And so these people, because of this arrangement, would find entire countries in terrible situations because leaders were not elected. Leaders were instead just given power over a country, regardless of how inept, incompetent, or at times inbred they might have been. And I know this could be offensive to some people, but that's just history. Nations fell because of those sorts of systems. And now we are in an election in, again, ideally something that promotes on merit and talent and ability. But now we're in an election where on one side there's the wife of a former president, on the other side there's the son of a former president who also happens to be the brother of a former president. So then that leads into a bigger theory, but let's stop here for a second because this is my personal opinion. Everything I'm about to say here is entirely my opinion, not necessarily Matt's, not the show's opinion. I believe that there should be a law, and I want to hear what you think about this law, folks. I think that there should be a law that says if your family member, relative is the president or has been, is a Supreme Court justice, is a senator, any of those people who are at the steering wheel of power, I believe that you should be banned from occupying another position. I say what you will about the Kennedys, but there shouldn't be a situation where the president and the attorney general and then what later a Supreme Court justice are all related. Not in a democracy. That stuff belongs in monarchies. So I don't know how to write that law, and honestly, it probably wouldn't pass because it's not in the best interest of many political dynasties. And whether or not it's unenforceable, I would like to hear your opinion about it. So again, is the system rigged? That leads us to number 4, which we'll just touch on briefly. After the candidates get to these actual presidential debates, aka the ones that people are most likely to watch, they go from the arms of the DNC and the RNC to a shady little outfit known as the Commission on Presidential Debates. There are 2 videos that we've already done on it, and if you haven't watched them yet, please do check them out. It's one of my favorite examples of Matt and I impersonating presidents. And speaking of rigging, that takes us to number 5, voter fraud. There are multiple conspiracies about voter fraud, from Diebold electronic vote rigging back in the 2000 election to the idea that citizens would commit voter fraud, the public rationalization for a voter ID act, to the idea that wealthy billionaires, operating in the shadows are actually determining the course of US politics. And you hear about the Koch brothers all the time, right? You hear about George Soros all the time. The money is real and the money is there. And I don't know how much of a theory that last point might be. And this all brings us to number 6, one of the big questions that Noel and Matt and I, and hopefully you, are going to explore in our audio podcast this week. Is this a real race? Has the next president already been selected rather than elected? And if so, by whom? Thanks so much for watching. Go to our website, stufftheyon'twantyouto.com, or to iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you like to watch podcasts or listen to podcasts, and check out this week's episode on political conspiracies. As always, our best ideas come from you. So if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, please write to us. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're Conspiracy Stuff at both of those. Our email is conspiracy@howstuffworks.com. And just one note, people going missing in national parks. We're on it. Thank you. Now, before I begin, I'd like to thank the American voters and, of course, the corporate sponsors who made this debate between the Republicrats and the Demopublicans possible. Corporate sponsors like Anheuser-Busch and its parent company InBev are, of course, a fundamental part of our modern democracy. Now, here's a personal anecdote about someone you've never met. And my opponent likes to claim that he represents the American public. But here's some keywords you should consider: middle-class families, the economy, terror, freedom.
Now, my opponent would have you believe that freedom is the most important keyword that you're going to hear tonight. Now, I'd like to point out that 1, opportunity. See this Band-Aid? That Band-Aid got there from hard work as your president. 2, jobs. Good jobs. That's 3. There's also justice. Not only justice for people, but justice for corporations. I'd like to add that Goldman Sachs is the most important corporation. Now hold on, everyone. Now, Goldman Sachs is important.